Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
And your co-host, Rich Gear, is kind of going back in time a little bit here. So
yeah, we have classic RAE today.
Classic RAE, I like it. But it's kind of interesting, Doug. We're going to be talking about the Navajo dinosaur and human tracks, which is really an exciting topic for both of us, actually.
That's right. Yeah, we just completed a couple of trips out to Arizona, which was a possibility for us to actually do some exploring on our own. I took one trip with you and
you and I have actually been out there twice.
Yeah, we've been. And I've been out there 5 times.
5 times. Maybe we were out there 3 times. Thinking we might have been out there a 3rd time.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't really matter. You want to give us a little bit of the history about these things, because it's kind of interesting. I had not heard about these early on, and suddenly there's quite a bit of interest in this. That they've been around for thousands of years. Obviously these tracks, but they've only really gotten notoriety in the last 40, 50 years, maybe at the most, right?
Right. First I heard where the guy who discovered them or found out about them was Errol Cummings, because he had to do an emergency landing with his airplane nearby.
Now he's a Noah's Ark guy, right?
Yeah, he's the guy who wrote Noah's Ark Fact or Fable.
Right. Yes.
And there was a nice the old film strip. This was back in 1968, 69 when he did that.
Yep.
And so I was just a high school guy, but he did a lot of different things about Noah's Ark.
So he's the same guy who's doing the Noah's Ark guy has a landing right in this area where these tracks are being discovered. Okay. So then you got so he had an emergency landing. He talked about them.
And then in 1989, there was a Creation Research Society quarterly article that was written by Rosenau, Aldany, and Howe, and I think there was another author on that. But they went out and did a fairly comprehensive study of those tracks, and so I think I think the first time that you and I went out there was in our 1999 trip.
I think that's correct. Yes. Yeah.
And so at that point in time, we found some of the tracks, some of the human tracks, and of course there was a lot of dinosaur tracks that we find. So, but when you and I went out there in November, we visited them and had a pretty good talk with a fellow by the name of Alvin. And then when I came out with Dan Jansen just in January, we had an old lady.
An older woman, older, showed you around, didn't she?
And that was really interesting, because she says, I have been doing this ever since I was a little girl. And so she says, I live in this little community up here, and I've done this all my life. And so her story is interesting, because they actually have a little community called the Moanavi, and it's a Navajo Indian band that they have a little village up in the mesa above where we saw them at the stand. And so, and actually what they do is that they grow pistachios.
Really?
Yeah, they have pistachio trees. And I learned this from Dan Jansen, because when we went to the Grand Canyon West part, we went through a little valley, and they had all these pistachio trees down there.
Oh, yeah?
And Dan identified them. He knew what they were.
Yeah, he's a good,
And so that was part of our second trip, was to go to the Grand Canyon West and stand on the skywalk and see the Grand Canyon from that point of view.
It's funny, Doug. I'm thinking about, I may have actually gone with a friend of mine, named Art Hansen, way back when I was in high school. And I just struck my memory just now, I believe it or not, because when we're walking along, finding the tracks, both human and dinosaur, specifically dinosaur, I remember going around and I had a whole big bunch of people following me, but I didn't know about the human tracks. I wasn't even a creationist. I was really a long age evolutionary guy, and I was showing all these people, and they were following me around. It's like because I could recognize where the dinosaur tracks, both the small ones, the larger, the allosaur type tracks, and the sauropod tracks, the theropod and the sauropod. But I didn't really realize till just now. It's just, that place is the same place I went with Art Hansen way back in about 1968.
Really?
It's the same place, and I just never put that together until just I'm thinking about the scenario and all the and it's this flat ground where all these tracks are able to be seen, but it's fascinating. Obviously, as a creation person, we hear about the human tracks there, and I remember the first time we went there, Doug. We saw several things, and they looked like there were patterns. But I'm not sure it would convince an evolutionist,
Right, yeah.
But there were some other things that were much more convincing and interesting, especially the time you and I went back there, the second time I think, that last time we were showing all the length of the dinosaur, the skeleton,
they actually found bones there.
Yes, that's what
unfossilized bones.
Unfossilized bones.
Well,
that's critical.
And then the second time this year, earlier in January, there was actually the carcasses. It looks like there's actually soft tissue in these things.
Wow, has anybody gone to research any of that?
No, I don't know if any creationist knows about these.
That would be a CRS
The old lady showed me this.
Really?
And so, but anyway, here's where you would find these. Is to go to the US 160 turnoff north of Cameron, Arizona on US 89.
Okay.
So you want to just go towards Tuba City, and the dinosaur tracks, the sort of curves around, and then it goes up a ridge, and it's right at the top of the ridge. And so that is the one thing that how to find it, and it's fairly easy to find. But if you're visiting the Grand Canyon, it's actually a stop that would make sense to do.
And the thing about it, it's kind of neat, Doug, because it's not been developed and evolutionized. It is what it is. It's on the reservation.
And the Navajos make sure that nobody messes with it because it's their land.
I like that, and this is because you basically got some ramshackle buildings, kind of this little stands and a couple of things. That's about all you have there,
right.
And yet you need the guys to show you different things. And it's interesting, Doug. I wonder if it's like when creation people come out or people who are interested in the human tracks, they take an interest in that. The Navajo takes some interest in that.
There's some evangelists who minister the Navajo. Ron Hutchcraft is one, and I think that he's been doing a good job of it, because when we talked with these two different guides, they might seem to be all over the map,
that's true. Yeah.
But if you ask them about their native stories about them, they say that we walked our ancestors 17 generations ago walked with the dinosaurs.
Now he said that, or
that was Alvin? Yeah, and also the old Navajo woman. I didn't get her name, but she was amazing. She showed us some stuff I had not seen in previous visits.
What did you see?
Well, like I said, the carcasses.
That I would have liked to see.
Yeah, it's all mummified. Looks like it was a mummified dinosaur carcass.
Wow. I wonder if the Navajo people would let some people come in and get some tissue samples. That would be something.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That would be something. Wow.
But the important thing to know is when you go to this place, give them a generous donation. Slip them a 20 or
they really appreciate it. In fact, we did that unbidden. We just gave them because I really appreciate it, and then they showed us a lot more. They showed us a bunch more stuff. So I don't do it for that reason, but it's sort of a nice thing. I think they appreciate being appreciated.
The guy, his name was Alvin. He gave us. He talked about his.
This with you and Dan?
No, this is when we went out.
When you and I, oh, that's right. You went with a woman. We went with Albert was the guy. You're right. You're right.
And he talked about, he would talk about Bigfoot, aliens, pterodactyls.
Yeah, he was all over the map. Yeah.
But he would say millions of years, but then he says our ancestors walked with the dinosaurs.
Yeah, he said that. Yeah.
And
So he was like giving whatever play to the audience, and you're going.
Yeah.
And then the problem with that, Doug, is the inconsistency makes him not a credible witness. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you don't expect them necessarily to be credible, but if you know that the eyewitness is one of his ancestors, well, he's going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
The carcass, I'll show you pictures that I got of that.
Okay.
It looked like it was a reptile, and it looked like it had the skin and everything in it.
Wow. Now, was this a sauropod? Long necked, or
it was more
thing?
like a alligator type of reptile.
Okay. Oh, so it wasn't a really.
And it wasn't. It was
dinosaur.
probably about as long as this bench here.
Okay.
So it was kind of neat. But you remember those bones?
Yes.
And we were rapping on them, and they sounded hollow.
They did not say. Yeah, they did not sound, and they did not sound like rock. They sounded like bone. Like more like bone stuff.
What is really interesting is that when we went in 1999, we found those. If you're facing the Navajo Indian stand, they'll take you out over to the right. But Alan Roy, he told us, well, we need to go to the left, and that's where he found that track sequence.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
But the criticism of those tracks is that they're sort of like in a layer separate from the dinosaur tracks, which were over on the other side.
Yeah, correct.
And so they, I've seen some articles online these tracks were debunked, debunking these tracks and how to do it. But the thing that I noticed here is that these tracks that we saw are newly uncovered. Remember, they talked about, actually it was the old lady who talked about this, that these tracks over here just appeared in the last flood that went through.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so they were under sediment before that.
Right.
Okay.
And so the tracks that we saw, where you saw the two human tracks and the dinosaur tracks, were in that newly uncovered spot.
Oh, when did she say when it was?
Yeah.
What would have been?
It would have been just recently.
Like in the last few months, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was kind of an interesting revelation and that sort of debunks the idea of the debunking.
It debunks the debunkers, yeah. Listen, so these newly uncovered tracks, were they both human and dinosaur?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we have,
you have to see those.
I have a picture of it where you have the two dinosaur tracks, the two human tracks, and they're sort of facing each other.
Interesting, yeah.
Most likely not at the same time.
Yeah, probably not. But still, it would have had to been mud. And tracks are always, they're sort of enigmatic for both creationists and evolutionists, how they got formed. There's a lot of theories about them, but the reality is they're there, so.
In the 1989 study, what they called them were quasi-human ichnofossils. Now, an ichnofossil means that it's not something that was preserved from the actual creature. It's just a track. And so if you talk about an ichnofossil, it's a track that, but it's not a remains of the original.
But in this area, like you mentioned, there's actually carcasses and bones as well as tracks.
Yeah, and we didn't know that until these last two trips.
Wow.
And so we're finding these things, and they had piled up along as a trail all this dinosaur coprolite.
Oh yeah. Poop, for those who don't know what coprolite is.
Yeah.
Fossilized poop, okay? So let's give them a straight poop on this one,
right.
And
there was also some eggs that they found.
Yes, I remember those. That was incredible.
They said they might be turtle eggs or something.
Yeah,
but we don't
they
know.
were the same layer strategy. But yeah, all right.
So you actually have a mixture of different things. There was actually some vegetation, marine vegetation they found in there. And so it's amazing. Now, in terms of how widespread this is, we asked them about that, and they said, "Oh, they're all over across the road. You go down the hill, and you find them down the hill. They're all up on the mesa up there." So now what you have is quite a number of different spots where, first of all, you have the sediment laid down in different waves. Okay, which would
now
be...
they're both dinosaur and human?
Yes.
It's going all over these places?
Yes.
Because you and I talked about some other really well-preserved human footprints with dinosaurs across the road or something. Yeah, that's the one I've never seen. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so that's private land over there, it's fenced off, but they said, well, if you go over there, you'd find some more. And so it's a fairly widespread area, and so these are things that they've known about. I remember years ago when I first put a little article about these on my website, that I got an email from one of the high school teachers at Tuba City High School.
Oh, really?
And he was the one who told me, yeah, they're down the hill, they're up in the mesa, all over the place, and it was kind of neat. I had a little email exchange with him.
Yeah, unlike Paluxy, you can't have somebody come out with a big hammer to try to destroy them, So, because we're on Navajo land, you don't want to do that. You get in a lot of trouble. So, yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about other dinosaur and human tracks.
Well, I just alluded to it right now with the Paluxy. Paluxy is controversial too, Doug, and we've talked about it in our show in the past.
First of all, tell where Paluxy is.
That's in Texas, near Glenrose, Texas, and it's Paluxy Riverbed there, which is outside of, well, how many miles was it west of Dallas or south? I'm trying to think.
It's south and west of Fort Worth.
Fort Worth, I mean, sorry, yeah. And what, about 50 miles or so?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit closer than that.
A little closer, right? Anyway, it's on that area. And it's had a storied career. In fact, we even talked about, I do, for your book, Doug, I drew that dinosaur T-Rex on stilts with human things on there. And they did almost the same thing at the state park because they don't want to acknowledge that these human and dinosaur footprints are really human and dinosaur footprints. There's been all kinds of theories. Well, they were actually dinosaur tracks, and when they eroded away, they looked human and all kinds of stuff. And then of course there's the controversy of back in the 20s and 30s where they got popularized quite a bit. There were actually people that lived around the area. They were carving their own tracks.
There was only a few instances.
Yeah, only a very few. But the problem is Doug, it's very easily some of these tracks that they've been cross-cut, and when you cross-cut, you can see whether they've actually been pushed down when it was soft, or whether they were carved out when the rock matrix is all stable. No matter how good the tracks look, you cross-cut it, and the molecular structure is entirely different. And so it's very easy. And the ones we saw, Doug, we remember we were with over at Carl Baugh's thing. They had cross-cut, and you could see the compressions. You could see some of the stuff that was, and it's so different than something like I do artwork, so I know about carving stuff. And when you carve a stone, you can make it look really good on the surface, but the matrix is going to be the same. I hope I'm not being too complicated, but it's very easily proven whether it's a carved or an actual track that really happened there. But the creationists backed off of that for a while because there was some of this false stuff. That's the only thing I've noticed that, Doug, in an overall sense, evolutionists are geniuses at throwing a little monkey wrench in something, and that way you want to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. They're geniuses at that. It discredits the whole thing because of one, and we have to be very aware and not be so quick to. We have to test it right to make sure that it's valid. But at the same time, we're not so quick to just abandon stuff without really fully saying, well, what is going on here? I think that's a fair. That's a real assessment. That's the real scientific method, if you will. Let's see if it holds up. And when you and I saw some of those tracks in humans, there's that one. I remember that one where that woman stepped her foot into the human footprint. And then there was a
That's a Beverly track, I think.
yeah, the Beverly track, and it was an Acrocanthosaurus dinosaur. The human track was inside, and it was a size 9A or something, 9B. Woman's, she fit right into it. It was like, wow, that was incredible, you know. So those are kinds of things we looked at, and so that and other things that were down there, Doug, like everything from the, I don't know, the human finger or whatever like that. I don't know much about that except that we saw it, and it sure looked like there was a bone in the middle of it, and it was a fossilized human finger, and several other fossils that were down there. They were quite amazing. But again, Doug, many of those tracks are under the sediment, and as the sediment gets washed away, more tracks materialize because the rock layer that the tracks are in is very soft, and it erodes away very quickly once it's been exposed.
By the way, Carl Ball is organizing another dig in April.
Oh, he is, really? Oh, my gosh.
And he's invited us to come.
Oh, I'd like to come down. Maybe we can figure out a way to go do that. Yeah.
We've got all sorts of opportunities coming up. Danny Faulkner wants us to go down to the Red River Gorge and videotape down there. That's that's the second largest area with arches in the name
Where's that located at?
Kentucky.
It really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Kentucky
he
has
calls
arches.
he calls it the Arch Encounter.
The arch encounter. I like it. I like it.
He's trying to promote that, and it's one of his favorite areas. But so there's all sorts of opportunity to see this stuff. If you go to the museum in Glen Rose, they have replicas in the museum of the Delta track where a dinosaur stepped into a human track.
Yep.
Yeah, there's several examples of these where they were either cut out of the rock, but they tell you where it was. Now, if you go to the Dinosaur Valley State Park, you can actually go to a spot where you can walk on stepping stones across the river.
Yeah.
And that's what they call the park ledge area, where you can find all kinds of human tracks, along with the dinosaur tracks.
Yeah, when we were down there several years ago, it was at the rainiest spring they ever had.
And that's where that sign was, where they showed the dinosaur with the booties on that showed the human tracks, So
human rubber feet on the dinosaur. It was the same basic idea I did with Doug's book, but the other thing too is I talked about a little earlier was woman put her foot in, and they actually had a cast of it, but the real track, they've buried it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Because they had another track, and somebody came out and tried to damage it.
Right.
Actually tried to destroy it.
Well, actually, they did. They
did destroy it?
What they saw this guy do, he had a big iron bar. He was just pounding into it, and sure enough, the next morning it came out there, it was obliterated. So that's part of the Taylor Trail, I think it was.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that other story. It's up in and actually Carl Ball had this the trilobites in the sandal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
that's a Meister print.
And they tried to get somebody tried to buy it, and I don't know who it was that was trying to buy it. Maybe you know, but
he was.
They wanted to find out why they wanted to buy it.
Yeah,
they said so we could destroy it.
Yeah, they offered him $250,000.
This was back in the 80s. I mean, it was maybe 70s. It was a long time ago, and because they wanted to destroy it. And I go, that to me is malicious. I said, you are not honest scientific people. You have an agenda, and that's what we find out, Doug. We talk about all this kind of stuff. Why do we talk about it, Doug? It's because we're trying to remove obstacles to faith, but the idea is there's a religious agenda, anti and pro, to get rid of this evidence, okay? Not that the evidence proves the Bible or the Scriptures, but it corroborates what the Scripture says is true. And they don't want any of that to happen.
Our arguments may not be bulletproof, but the alternatives from the evolutionary point of view to explain these things are really don't hold much water if you look at it. Like the tracks we saw just recently, the new ones, those had toes in it.
Yes.
You can see the toes.
That's good, because the other ones really didn't have that.
Right, and so the ones with the toe prints really shows that it's a human track. Now, to actually fake that, which the evolutionists would claim, they would have to explain how it was faked, or if it was actually. The other argument is that it's a dinosaur track, but
That's the big argument I've heard in a lot of them, especially in Biloxi, that it was dinosaur tracks, and when they filled in, they looked human. I go, wow.
when they eroded, they looked human.
They eroded, yeah.
That's what they said, but what it was is that it was a human that stepped in the dinosaur track.
That's what happened, yeah.
And so the arguments don't hold water that I see, and I think of these tracks are really a nice. And I'd invite you to go online and look up what the evolutionists say about this, because and see if their arguments really make sense, especially if you've been there. If you've been there and you've seen it, and being able to view it yourself, it doesn't make any sense to say that.
We've seen the Biloxi, we've seen the Meister print, and we've seen the Tuba City tracks. And yeah, it's easy to say to try to debunk something when you've never seen them, but when you see them up close and personal, these things really look like human and dinosaur tracks together. It's really fascinating.
Now, there's one place I want to go, but it'll take a little bit to get there, Rich. Is Lesotho? You know where that is? It's
Lesotho in South Africa.
South Africa.
It's one of the countries we're landlocked, kind of surrounded by South Africa, yeah.
In Lesotho, there's a place called Kuthing, and they have caves in which you can see the dinosaur tracks on the ceiling.
I've heard, that's where I have heard about that. Dinosaur tracks on the ceiling, interesting.
And it's reversed of the impressions from the top. And so the dinosaur.
So it's convex, a little bit tracks are, okay, wow. That would be interesting to see.
And so that's one of my bucket list places to go if I can. But to get there, it's a bit of a project.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it seems like there's so many fascinating things for us to explore.
There really are, Doug. And I tell you what, it lines up with a creationary worldview in so many good respects. And I think that's amazing that God made it. He said He made it, and He destroyed it and come out. But with the hope, the world was subjected to futility, but in hope. And I think that's what it is. That these things kind of talk about, really gives us that credence, that verisimilitude, likeness of truth. And I think that's great I guess we'll leave it with that, Doug.
All right, we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.